Universal Happiness Analysts Study Human Family Dinner's Complete Story. Part 1. Doctor stood before the Council of Emotional Studies, her three eyes blinking in sequence as she prepared to make her case. The council chamber was enormous, with representatives from 40 different species sitting in their specialized seats. Some floated. Some were submerged in tanks. Some existed only as glowing energy fields. All of them looked skeptical. "Members of the council," began, her translator converting her clicking speech into the universal language, "I come before you with an unusual request. I want to study human family dinners." A ripple of confusion passed through the chamber. A towering crystalline being spoke first. "Dinners? You mean the primitive act of consuming organic matter? This is what you wish to study?" Had expected this reaction. She pulled up her data screens, letting holographic charts fill the air around her. "For the past 5 years, my team at the Galactic Happiness Institute has been measuring emotional warmth across all known species. We measure connection, contentment, and communal joy. And humans, despite all logic, score higher than any other species we've studied." "That's impossible," said the representative from the Hiver colonies. "In his species, individuals were linked through a hive mind. We Hivers share thoughts directly. How could humans, who can't even hear each other's minds, possibly generate more warmth than we do?" Smiled, which in her species meant showing all her teeth. "That's exactly what puzzled us. So we analyzed the data more carefully. We looked at when humans generate their highest warmth readings. The answer surprised us." She pulled up a new chart. "Family dinners. Specifically, the ritual of gathering multiple family members around a table to consume food together." The council chamber erupted in confused chatter. A being made of living crystal who resonated thoughts instead of speaking sent out a wave of pure bewilderment. The sentiment was clear. This made no sense. "Most advanced species abandoned communal eating millions of years ago," said. "It's inefficient. It's messy. Many species found it actually decreased happiness because of resource competition and food aggression." "Exactly," agreed. "The Avi had to ban group eating after the food wars nearly destroyed their civilization. They found that eating together triggered their territorial instincts. We evolved past the need for social eating 20,000 years ago. We absorb nutrients in private, as civilized beings should." "Then why do humans persist with this practice?" asked. "Have they not evolved past such base behaviors?" Pulled up video footage of a human family dinner. The council watched as a group of humans crammed around a wooden table, passing dishes back and forth, talking over each other, laughing loudly. One small human spilled liquid everywhere. An older human criticized the food while simultaneously eating large quantities of it. 2 humans argued about something called politics while others ignored them completely. It looked like absolute chaos. "This is what you want to study?" asked. "This disorder?" "Look at the warmth readings," said, highlighting numbers that appeared next to the video. "They're off the scale, and this isn't an isolated case. We've observed this pattern across thousands of human families, across all their different cultures and economic levels. Something about this ritual generates warmth that we cannot explain." She showed more videos. A family where everyone spoke different languages but somehow communicated perfectly. A family sitting in near silence, yet the readings showed intense connection. A family where half the members appeared angry, but the underlying warmth remained constant. The data was undeniable and utterly baffling. "I propose a 3-month field study," continued. "My team will observe 12 human families across Earth. We'll attend their dinners, measure everything we can, and try to understand what's actually happening during these gatherings. If we can understand the source of human warmth, perhaps we can learn something valuable about happiness itself." The council debated for hours. Many argued it was a waste of resources. Some suggested humans were simply primitive and would eventually evolve past such behaviors. Others worried about interference with a developing species. but data was too compelling to ignore. Finally, they voted to approve the study with strict observation protocols. As left the chamber, she felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. She'd been studying happiness for 50 years, but this felt different. Humans had something her species had lost long ago, and she wasn't entirely sure she wanted to find it. What if the secret to happiness required becoming less civilized, less efficient, less evolved? What would that mean for the billions of beings who had engineered such behaviors out of their genetics? She met her team in the preparation bay. Was there, his compound eyes gleaming with curiosity. Despite his skepticism, he was one of the best psychologists in the galaxy. Floated nearby, their crystalline form catching the light and throwing rainbow patterns across the walls. They were an anthropologist who had studied hundreds of species. And then there was Pip, a young who had just graduated from the academy. Pip's form quivered with excitement. "We're really going to Earth?" Pip asked, their voice bubbling with enthusiasm. "We're going to eat with humans." "We're going to observe humans eating," corrected. "We'll use holographic disguises to appear human, but we'll maintain our own nutritional needs through standard absorption." "I've been reading about human food," Pip continued, ignoring the correction. "They have something called pizza that combines multiple food sources into a round shape, and chocolate, which triggers their pleasure responses. And they have competitions about making food, and entire buildings dedicated to serving food to strangers and—" Pip interrupted, "Remember, this is a scientific mission. We're not here to indulge in human behaviors. We're here to understand them." Resonated a thought that translated roughly to, "Understanding requires experience, not just observation." Nodded, "Is right. We need to be thorough. That means attending full dinners, not just recording from a distance. It means potentially participating in their customs, but we maintain scientific objectivity at all times." They spent the next week preparing. The hardest part was programming their holographic disguises. Humans came in such variety that choosing an appearance was complicated. Different skin colors, different body shapes, different facial features. Chose to appear as what humans called middle-aged, with graying hair and what she hoped was a friendly face. Became a tall, thin human male. Hologram was a young woman with dark skin. Pip became a teenage boy, which seemed to match their enthusiastic personality. They studied human customs, learned about small talk, practiced facial expressions. Smiling was particularly difficult for, as her species used completely different expressions. They learned about handshakes, about eye contact, about the strange human custom of lying politely when asked if you liked something. Why do humans ask questions they don't want honest answers to? Wondered after reviewing the training materials. If a human asks if you like their food and you say no, they become upset. Why ask at all? "It's a bonding ritual," explained, though she didn't fully understand it herself. "The question isn't really about information exchange. It's about something else. We'll need to figure out what." Finally, they were ready. They had identified 12 families across Earth who had agreed to host what they believed were visiting researchers from another country. The families didn't know they were hosting aliens. The holographic technology was perfect, and translation matrices would handle language differences in real time. Their first dinner was scheduled for the next evening with a family called the, who lived in what humans called San Francisco. Reviewed the family information as their ship entered Earth's atmosphere. 3 generations, 7 individuals total. The grandmother didn't speak the same language as the parents worked long hours. The teenagers were described as difficult. It seemed like a recipe for disaster. But the warmth readings from previous scans of this family were extraordinary. Whatever was happening at the family table needed to understand it. The future of galactic happiness research might depend on it. As their ship landed in a hidden location and they prepared to meet their first human family, wondered if she was ready for what she might discover. Sometimes, she thought, the most profound truths came from the most unexpected places. Part 2. The family home was smaller than expected. Her briefing materials said 7 humans lived here, but the space seemed barely adequate for 3. How did they all fit? The team stood on the doorstep, and Pip reached forward to press the button that would announce their arrival. Somewhere inside, a bell chimed. The door opened to reveal a small human woman with flour on her hands and a bright smile. "You must be the researchers. Come in, come in. Sorry about the mess, we're still cooking." Mrs. ushered them inside, talking rapidly. The translation matrix worked perfectly, converting her Cantonese-English mix into something the team could understand. The home smelled strange. Not bad, but overwhelming. Sensors identified garlic, ginger, soy sauce, and at least 15 other compounds. Humans apparently liked their food to announce itself. "Mom, the guests are here," Mrs. called out. An older woman emerged from the kitchen, wiping her hands on an apron. She looked at the visitors and immediately started speaking in rapid Cantonese. The translation matrix worked, but the tone was clear even without words. She was criticizing her daughter about something. "My mother says I should have cleaned more," Mrs. explained, though that wasn't exactly what the grandmother had said. "Please sit down. Michael, come help set the table." 2 teenage boys emerged from a back room, both staring at screens in their hands. They looked up reluctantly, noticed the visitors, and suddenly straightened up. "Oh, hey," the older one said. "You're the researchers, right? From the university?" "That's correct," said, using her practiced friendly smile. "Thank you for having us." The next 20 minutes were chaos. The team tried to stay out of the way as the family transformed their small dining room into dinner central. A table that seemed too small somehow expanded with hidden leaves. Chairs appeared from various rooms. The grandmother and Mrs. carried out dish after dish from the kitchen, still arguing in Cantonese about cooking techniques. Mr. arrived home from work, loosened his tie, and immediately started telling a long story about his day that no one seemed to be listening to. The teenage boys set the table with the efficiency of long practice, moving around each other in a practice dance. The younger one, Michael, kept glancing at the visitors. "So, what are you researching exactly?" he asked. "Family dynamics," answered smoothly. They'd prepared this cover story carefully. "We're studying how different families interact during daily activities." "That's cool, I guess," Michael said, though his tone suggested he found it anything but cool. "You're gonna be pretty bored, we just eat dinner." But they didn't just eat dinner. When everyone finally sat down, squeezing around the table that was definitely still too small, something shifted in the room. The grandmother, still complaining about the cooking in Cantonese, began serving soup to everyone, making sure each person got the best pieces. Mrs. asked the boys about school, and though they responded with typical teenage minimalism, she somehow pulled real information from their grunts and shrugs. Mr. started another long story about work, but this time people listened, interjecting with questions and comments. The grandmother interrupted to point out that he should have handled a situation differently. Mr. argued back in Cantonese. Mrs. translated key points for the boys, who added their own opinions. What should have been an argument somehow became a conversation. Watched fascinated. Her warmth sensors were climbing steadily. Pip sat next to Michael, looking completely lost. Humans ate in such a strange way, using small sticks to pick up food, bringing it to their mouths, chewing, swallowing. The whole process seemed incredibly inefficient, but between bites they talked. They passed dishes without being asked, somehow knowing who needed what. They refilled each other's water glasses. They shared food from their own plates without hesitation. "You're not eating much," the grandmother said suddenly, looking directly at. The translation matrix caught the concern in her voice. "You don't like the food." This was the moment had prepared for. "It's delicious," she said, taking a small bite of rice. "I'm just enjoying watching your family. It's fascinating." The grandmother smiled, apparently satisfied. Then she proceeded to put more food on his plate anyway. The conversation flowed like water, moving from topic to topic. School, work, neighborhood gossip, politics, the weather. Mentioned he was applying to colleges, and suddenly everyone had opinions. The grandmother thought he should stay local. Mrs. wanted him to follow his dreams. Mr. worried about money. Himself looked overwhelmed. Then Michael made a joke about his brother being too smart for the family, and everyone laughed. The tension broke. Smiled, looking relieved. The conversation moved on, but noticed that parents found ways to return to the subject gently throughout the meal, offering support without pressure. Who had been quiet, suddenly resonated a thought that only the team could hear through their private channel. Watch the small gestures. Shifted her attention, was right. Between the conversations, a whole other dialogue was happening. Mrs. and her mother exchanged looks that communicated entire thoughts. Mr.'s hand briefly touched his wife's shoulder when she seemed tired. The boys kicked each other under the table, but in a way that seemed affectionate rather than aggressive. When someone reached for a dish, hands moved out of the way automatically. When someone spoke, others leaned in slightly to listen. These tiny actions were generating enormous warmth readings. The sensors were detecting something had never seen before: layered connection. Humans were bonding on multiple levels simultaneously, through words, through touch, through shared food, through simple proximity. The dinner lasted 2 hours. 2 hours of sitting in one place, of eating slowly, of constant interaction. For species, such an extended gathering would have been exhausting, but they seemed energized by it. Even the teenagers, who had seemed reluctant at first, were fully engaged by the end. As the meal wound down, the grandmother started collecting dishes, and immediately everyone helped. It was like watching a choreographed dance. Mrs. washed, Mr. dried, put away. Michael cleared the table. The grandmother supervised and continued offering commentary on everything. "You don't have to help," Mrs. told the visitors, "you're guests." But Pip had already picked up several dishes, mimicking the family's movements. "I want to help," Pip said, and detected genuine enthusiasm in their voice. That was concerning. Pip was supposed to maintain scientific objectivity. The team left an hour later, full of data and confused. In their rented apartment, they sat together reviewing the recordings, kept replaying sections, trying to understand what had happened. Created visualizations of the warmth patterns, showing how they peaked and flowed throughout the meal. "It's not the food," said slowly. "The food is just an excuse, a reason to gather." "But they take it so seriously," Pip protested. "Did you see how the grandmother criticized every dish even while cooking it? How Mrs. tried to make everything perfect? They care deeply about the food." "They care about each other," resonated. "The food is a medium for expressing that care." Clicked his mandibles thoughtfully. "In my species, we share thoughts directly through the hive connection. We know instantly what others need or feel, but humans can't do that. So they've created this ritual where they demonstrate care through actions, cooking for each other, serving each other, sharing food." "But that still doesn't explain the warmth levels," argued. "Direct hive connections should generate more warmth than these indirect demonstrations, yet they don't." They had no answer. Over the following weeks, they attended dinners with 11 more families. Each one was different. The Martinez family was loud, with everyone talking over everyone else in a mix of Spanish and English. The team's translation matrices struggled to keep up. Yet somehow, the family members understood each other perfectly through the chaos. The O's family was quieter, with conversations that seemed to have subtext the team couldn't quite grasp. The father made what appeared to be insulting comments about his son's new haircut, but the son laughed. The daughter told a story, and her mother interrupted to say, "We've heard this a million times," but with such affection that it wasn't really a complaint. The Williams family had dietary restrictions that made meals complicated. One child was vegetarian. The father had allergies. The grandmother needed soft foods. Yet they still ate together, everyone with different meals, accommodating each other without complaint. The team documented everything. They measured warmth levels, recorded conversations, analyzed behavioral patterns. But the more they observed, the less they understood. Human family dinners were messy, inefficient, and often involved disagreement. Arguments broke out. People got frustrated with each other. Food was burned, spilled, criticized. Yet somehow, through all of it, the warmth remained. Pip was particularly affected. After each dinner, they seemed more reluctant to return to their efficient nutrient absorption. "Don't you think the food looks interesting?" Pip asked one evening. "The way humans combine flavors, the colors and textures." "It's just fuel for their bodies," said firmly. "Don't romanticize it." But even seemed changed. Caught him watching cooking videos in his free time, studying human recipes with the same intensity he usually reserved for psychological research. Part 3. The breakthrough came during their final week on Earth. The team was scheduled to observe the Jackson family, a large extended family in what humans called Georgia. But when they arrived, something was different. The house was full of people, far more than usual. Many wore dark clothes. The warmth readings were strange, fluctuating wildly between high and low. Mrs. Jackson greeted them at the door, her eyes red. "Thank you for coming," she said quietly. "I wasn't sure if we should cancel, given the circumstances, but I think Dad would have wanted us to keep the tradition." Through careful questions, learned what had happened. The grandfather, the patriarch of the Jackson family, had died 3 days earlier. This dinner was happening during what humans called the mourning period. His first instinct was to leave. Grief was private in most species. Witnessing it seemed intrusive. But Mrs. Jackson insisted they stay. "Dad loved meeting new people. He would have enjoyed talking to you all." The dinner was unlike any they'd observed. More than 20 humans crowded into a house designed for fewer. They brought food, lots of it, dishes that people had made and carried from their own homes. The dining table couldn't fit everyone, so they sat in every room, on couches and chairs, and even on the floor. And they talked about the grandfather. Someone told a story about his terrible jokes. Someone else remembered his worst singing. They laughed, then cried, then laughed again. They passed around old photographs. They argued about details of stories, correcting each other's memories. No, that was at the lake house, not the beach house." "He didn't say that," he said. "Remember when he—" Watched in amazement. In her species, death was processed privately. The deceased was mourned individually, and then life continued. Collective grieving was seen as inefficient, likely to create emotional resonance that would make the pain worse. But humans did the opposite. They grieved together, intensely, messily, openly. And the warmth readings were extraordinary. Despite the sadness, despite the tears, the connection between the family members grew stronger throughout the evening. They held each other. They shared tissues. They made sure everyone ate something. The younger children were gently explained to why everyone was sad. The older members told stories to preserve the grandfather's memory. Pip sat next to a young human girl who was crying quietly. Without thinking, Pip reached out and patted her hand. The girl looked up, surprised, then smiled slightly. "Did you know my grandpa?" she asked. "No," Pip admitted, "but I wish I had." "He gave the best hugs," the girl said. "Really tight ones that lasted a long time. And he always had peppermints in his pocket. And he told the same jokes over and over, but he laughed so hard at them that you couldn't help laughing too, even though they weren't funny." The girl kept talking, and Pip kept listening and realized something profound was happening. Pip wasn't just observing anymore. Pip was participating. And somehow, that participation was generating its own warmth. Later that night, back at their apartment, the team sat in silence. Finally, resonated a thought. "I understand now." "Explain," said. Crystals shimmered as they organized their thoughts. "We've been measuring warmth as if it's a resource that exists independently. But it doesn't. Warmth isn't something humans have. It's something they create together through the act of choosing to be vulnerable with each other." "Vulnerable?" asked Think about every dinner we attended, continued. Humans show up imperfect. They show up tired, frustrated, messy. They show up with problems they can't solve and flaws they can't hide. The grandmother criticized while serving with love. The O's family teased while caring deeply. The Jackson family cried while supporting each other. They don't wait until they're perfect to connect. They connect despite being imperfect. Felt something click in her mind. We evolved past communal eating because it revealed our base instincts, our aggression, our selfishness, our inefficiency. We engineered those traits out and lost the need to eat together. But humans, they kept those traits. They're still aggressive sometimes, still selfish sometimes, still inefficient always, but they show up anyway. The dinner table is a stage for voluntary vulnerability, said slowly. They gather knowing they might argue, might disappoint each other, might reveal their flaws. They do it anyway, over and over. And that repeated choice to show up imperfect creates the warmth we've been measuring. Pip was crying, which was notable because rarely cried. We lost something, didn't we? When we became advanced, when we became efficient, when we engineered out our flaws, we lost the ability to be vulnerable together. We lost warmth. The team sat with that realization, thought about her own species. They were highly advanced. They lived efficiently, cleanly, perfectly, and they were profoundly lonely. They had optimized away the very messiness that created connection. The next day presented her preliminary findings to the council via quantum communication. She showed them the data, the patterns, the measurements. But more importantly, she told them what she'd learned. Humanity's greatest strength isn't their technology or their adaptability. It's their weaponized vulnerability. They've turned imperfection into a tool for connection. The council was quiet for a long moment, finally spoke. So the secret to happiness is being less evolved. No, said firmly. It's being brave enough to be imperfect with each other. Evolution isn't just about becoming more efficient. Sometimes it's about preserving what makes life worth living. The response to her report was unprecedented. It went viral across the galactic network. Species that had abandoned communal activities ago began reconsidering. The hivers, who shared everything through their hive mind, started experimenting with individual experiences they could then share collectively. The who photosynthesized began gathering in groups just to be together, calling it shared light absorption time. Dinner tables started appearing on planets that hadn't seen them in ages. They were often awkward at first. Species that had forgotten how to eat socially had to relearn. But slowly, tentatively, warmth readings across the galaxy began to rise. On their last day on Earth, the team received an unexpected message. It was from Mrs. Jackson, inviting them to Thanksgiving dinner. "We'd be honored if you join us," she wrote. "You're part of our story now." Looked at her team. Pip was practically vibrating with excitement, was trying to look professional but failing, resonated pure joy, and felt something she hadn't experienced in decades: anticipation. "We'll need to extend our stay," she said officially, "for research purposes." Of course, Pip agreed, grinning. Strictly scientific. When Thanksgiving arrived, they drove to the Jackson house with actual nervousness. They'd attended dozens of dinners now, but this felt different. This time, they weren't just observers. They were guests. They were wanted. The house was even more crowded than before. The dining table stretched from one room into another, expanded with extra surfaces and covered in more food than had ever seen in one place. Humans kept arriving, bringing more dishes, hugging each other, talking loudly, filling the space with noise and warmth. Mrs. Jackson hugged each team member as they entered. "We're so glad you could make it. Come on, we saved you seats." They sat down among the Jacksons and their extended family. Someone said a blessing over the food that mentioned being thankful for new friends. Then the chaos began, dishes passing in all directions, conversations overlapping, children running around, laughter and storytelling, and the comfortable noise of people who cared about each other choosing to be together. Pip accidentally knocked over a glass of water, panicking as it spilled across the table, but Mr. Jackson just laughed and mopped it up. "Happens every year," he said. "Last year, Uncle Joe dropped an entire turkey." "We don't talk about the turkey incident," Uncle Joe called from across the table. His holographic disguise flickered when he laughed too hard at a joke, causing a brief shimmer. No one mentioned it, asked for seconds using completely the wrong idiom, saying, "I'll take another round on that bird." The humans just smiled and passed the turkey. Looked around the table at her team, at the Jackson family, at the impossible amount of food and noise and mess. Her warmth sensors were going crazy, but for once she wasn't analyzing them. She was feeling them. This was what humans had that her species had lost. Not efficiency, not perfection. Just the simple, difficult, beautiful choice to show up for each other, flawed and imperfect and real. "Dr. Vex," Mrs. Jackson asked, "you okay? You look far away." Smiled, and this time it wasn't practiced or programmed. "I'm perfect," she said. Then she corrected herself. "Actually, I'm wonderfully imperfect, and I'm exactly where I need to be." Mr. Jackson raised his glass. "To new friends," he said. "To new friends," everyone echoed. And for the first time in 50 years of research, turned off all her measuring instruments. Some things she'd learned were meant to be experienced rather than analyzed. Some warmth wasn't meant to be measured. It was meant to be felt, shared, and celebrated. The humans had known this all along. They'd been creating happiness the hard way, the messy way, the imperfect way. And it turned out that was the only way that really worked. As dinner continued around her, made a mental note for her final report. But it wouldn't be about data or measurements or scientific findings. It would be about the most important discovery of her career. That sometimes the most advanced thing a species can do is remain beautifully, courageously, imperfectly human.